Now? No. In 1820, thousands of immigrants moved to Texas. They brought with them customs and ways of life that were not like Tejano way of life. These customs and beliefs caused conflicts with the Mexican government. Texans and Mexicans did not see eye to eye. Language barriers and freedom of religion were just some of the problems Texans faced. On April 6, 1830, a law was passed to stop settlers from settling in Texas. This angered many settlers who wanted to bring their families with them. This was the last straw. The Texans wanted their freedom back. The dictator Santana had to be stopped. The revolution would soon begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the reenactment of the Battle of Gonzales by Ms. Lopez's 4th grade class.
It all began on a crisp autumn day, year 1835, October 2nd. Mexican Colonel Domingo Yucateche was ordered to seize a cannon with the force of 4 men from his army.
Moses Austin had a dream.
Can't find it, sir. What? Captain Castaneda shows up on the other side of the Guadalupe River with 10 soldiers, and the Texans have just finished preparing for battle.
The Texan army, led by Colonel John H. Moore and his volunteer soldiers, decided to move the cannon from the peach orchard and proudly show it off to their enemy.
Come and take it. The cannon is ours.
This shot left the Mexican soldiers with 1 death. Texans lost no soldiers.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Texas Revolution has begun.
Of the land so vast and free. All but Moses died before his dream could become a reality. As he died, he left his son the Lone Star legacy. So Stephen came to Texas to live his father's dreams. Lone Star dream in a land so wild and free. The Lone Star dream, that's where I want to be. Stephen F. Austin came to Texas to live the Lone Star dream. Stephen went to Mexico as a diplomat, and he talked old Santa Anna into giving him a grant of land. He wanted to settle up old Texas and bring settlers to work the land. Yes, Austin came to Texas with a master plan. Lone Star dream, a land so wild and free. Lone Star dream, that's where I want to be. Stephen F. Austin came to Texas to live the Lone Star dream. You know, Stephen's reason for coming to Texas was to fulfill his father's dreams. But as a diplomat, he was able to charm the Mexican government into allowing him to colonize the beautiful lands of Texas. And because of his efforts and his ability as a diplomat, the dream of Moses Austin is still alive. Lone Star dream in a land so wild and free. Lone Star dream, that's where I want to be. Stephen F. Austin came to Texas to live a Lone Star dream. Austin came to Texas and built a Lone Star dream.
This is the story of the Texas Revolution and her fight for independence from Mexico.
Fathers of Texas fought to keep us free. Fathers of Texas, you rewrote history, left a Lone Star legacy. Austin brought the old 300 on a grant from Mexico. Travis Bowie and Davy Crockett died.
The Battle of Goliad was the second skirmish of the Texas Revolution. In the early morning hours of October 9, 1835, the Texans crept stealthily to the fort near the town of Goliad and attacked the Mexican army soldiers stationed there. The Texans split into 4 groups to surround the fort. Using axes they borrowed from the townspeople, they approached the entrance to shot through the door. A guard saw them and sounded the alarm before he was shot and killed.
The Texans quickly chopped through the door and took control over the Mexican soldiers. The battle only lasted about 30 minutes before they surrendered. 1 Mexican soldier had been killed and 3 others wounded. The Texans had only 1 injury. Through the victory of Goliad, the Texans acquired $10,000 worth of food, weapons, and other supplies from the Mexican army. The much-needed supplies, including cannons, were shared with the Texans at forts throughout the area. With the fort overtaken by the Texans, the Mexicans no longer had a direct route from the coast to San Antonio. This stopped their line of supplies and soldiers. The surviving Mexican soldiers were told to stop fighting the Texans and leave Texas immediately.
Go home! Don't fight us anymore!
This proved to be a bad decision on the Texans' part.
Between 1824 and 1827, 297 families joined Austin to settle Texas. Since things naturally seem bigger in Texas, we call those 297 families the old 300. The dream had just begun.
Well, the old 300 moved to Texas to settle in the new frontier. Moses Austin's dream became a reality, and the dream had just begun. The dream had just begun. It paved the way for many more to come. With cotton and corn, a new land is born, and the dream had just begun. the old 300 stayed in Texas. They settled in the new frontier, fighting Indians when weather. We all fought together, and the dream had just begun. The dream had just begun, and it paved the way for many more to come. With cotton and corn, a new land is born, and the dream had just begun. Yes, the dream had just begun.
The number of Americans moving to Texas by the 1830s was growing. The Mexican government was in turmoil as Santa Anna became dictator in 1833. Texans wanted freedom from Mexico. War seemed inevitable. On October 2nd, 1835, Mexican soldiers tried to take a cannon from the town of Gonzales as 160 Texas settlers with long rifles and a flag saying, "Come and take it," met 100 Mexican dragoons. The Texans opened fire and the Texas Revolution had begun.
Well, the word spread like a prairie fire, said the Mexicans are on their way. They say they want our cannon. Well, they must be insane.
We're waiting at the river with our long rifles and bowie knives. So come on and take it if you're ready for a fight.
Come on and take it if you want it, here it is. Come on and take it, but be ready for a fight.
On October 11, 1835, Stephen F. Foster was elected commander of the Texas Army. He wanted to take over the Texas capital, San Antonio, and drive the Mexican military out of Texas. He took his 300 men and began his approach towards San Antonio. He sent out scouts before each move to ensure that his volunteer army would not be caught by surprise. Because of the lateness in the day, Jim Bowie decided to set up camp for the night at a place near a large bend of river near Mission Concepcion.
It's too dark. We must camp here for the night.
On the morning of October 28, 1835, the countryside was covered in fog. Even though they could not see well, General Cox decided to move in on the Texas Army. Cox sent out about 400 men and 2 cannons. As the Mexican soldiers began to approach, the Texans crouched below the river bank for protection.
Sharpshooters with Texan long rifles focused their attention on the Mexican gunners and quickly silenced the Mexican army. The Mexican army began to fall back. Taking advantage of this retreat, Bowie led a charge toward the Mexican army. The Mexicans were soon able to turn one of the Mexicans' own cannon against them. The battle soon ended. Many Mexican soldiers and only one Texan had been killed during the battle. Even though the Texans were outnumbered roughly 3-1 when they were attacked, the battle was won by the smaller Texan force.
1, 2, 3, go.
That was the Battle of Concepcion.
We fired our guns and it took off running, and the Texas Revolution began.
We fired our guns and they took off running, and we loaded up and shot them again. Want it, here it is. Come on and take it, but be ready for a fight.
We fired our guns and it took off running, and the Texas Revolution began.
We fired our guns and we took off running, and we loaded up and shot them again.
Well, we fired our guns and it took off running, and the Texas Revolution began.
We fired our guns and they took off running, and we loaded up and shot them again.
I guess we often do things just a little backwards in Texas. Here we are starting a revolution before we even have an army. So, volunteers in buckskins and homespun shirts came from out of the woods, off their farming ranches. Men in coonskin caps with long rifles. Sort of an unorganized looking bunch. Folks just smiled and called us a ragtag army.
Texas ragtag army. Come on, boys, and join up today. Oh, Texas needs you and you need her too. We're gonna whip the Mexican army. Buckskins were the closest thing to a uniform. Every kind of hat, a skin cap you could think of was worn. Our guns are all, the knives are sharp. We're doing the best we can. Everybody knows the clothes don't make a fighting man. Volunteer for the Texas ragtag army. Come on, boys, and join up today. Oh, Texas needs you and you need her too. We're gonna whip the Mexican army. We're gonna whip the Mexican army. Yeah, we're gonna whip the Mexican army.
On February 21st, 1836, Texan scouts discovered Santa Anna and his 5,000 soldiers camped along the Medina River 8 miles south of San Antonio. He wanted the Texans to surrender the Alamo to the Mexican government. Meanwhile, at the Alamo, 180 Texans and their families lived together and defended the fort. They began preparing for an attack by molding bullets, gathering food and water, and strengthening the walls. The Texans were led by James Bowie, a frontiersman from Louisiana, William Barrett Travis, a young attorney from Alabama, and David Crockett, who came from Tennessee with 12 volunteers to assist the Texans in fighting for independence. All 3 men refused to give up the Alamo to Mexican forces. Travis became the sole commander of the Texans when Bowie became sick with pneumonia after a cannon fell on him and a broken rib punctured his lung. By February 24th, Travis was worried the Texans were outnumbered and sent a letter asking for help from all willing and able Texas men. Travis stated he would rather die than surrender, using his now famous words, "victory or death."
After many days of cannon fire from the Mexican army, it seemed victory at the Alamo would be impossible for the Texans. It is rumored that Travis grouped his men in the plaza of the Alamo, using his sword, drew a line in the sand. He told volunteers they could leave if they wanted to, but if they crossed the line, they would stay and fight with honor. On March 5th, a bitter cold wind blew through San Antonio. After firing cannons for many days, Santa Anna ordered the Mexican cannons be silenced in hopes the Texans would rest. At dawn on the morning of March 6th, Texans awoke to a blast from a Mexican bugle and the rumbling of thousands of feet on the cold, hard ground. Charging all four sides of the Alamo, the Mexican song El Deguello could be heard in the distance, which meant that no Texan life would be spared. Travis rallied his troops.
Come on, men. The Mexican troops are upon us.
Texans fought back with cannons and accurate rifle fire and successfully pushed back the Mexican troops. On the second wave of attack, Mexicans led by General Cos tried to use ladders to scale the walls of the Alamo. Texan sharpshooters prevented Mexican soldiers from successfully getting over the walls.
Unfortunately, Texans could not stand a chance against an army ready to sacrifice thousands of men. Mexican soldiers fought their way through the northeast wall and were now inside the Alamo fighting face to face with the Texans. William Travis was one of the first Texans who perished. He died slumped over a cannon while fighting on the front lines alongside his men. David Crockett fell to the Mexican soldiers at the stockade wall with his favorite rifle, Old Betsy, in hand. James Willie fought bravely from his cot in the chapel. He is said to be found with a knife in one hand and a pistol in the other. The bodies of Mexican soldiers surrounding him. Robert Evans, the last man standing, ran with a torch blazing in hopes of destroying what remained of the Texan supply, so they could not be used by the enemy. Before he could reach the chapel where the remaining gunpowder was stored, he was shot down by a Mexican soldier. Even though outnumbered, the Alamo defenders managed to wound or kill over 1,600 Mexican soldiers. That was victory in itself. After the Mexican victory at the Alamo, Santa Anna ordered the bodies of the Texans be burned and the fallen Mexican soldiers be buried. Santa Anna decided to let the women, children, and slaves go free. This small act of mercy allowed Susanna Dickinson to escape. She was sent to find Sam Houston and Gonzalez to deliver a message of warning. The cruelty of Mexican soldiers at the Alamo led many Texans and Americans to join the Texas Army to fight Mexico.
The next morning, December 5th, 1835, Ben Milam expressed his views.
Who will go with old Ben Milam in San Antone? Do you ride with me, or do I fight alone? All the men that followed to ride by his side, on to San Antonio to live or to die. Ben drew his sword, drew a line in the dust. He said, will you follow me? Who do you trust? Who will go with old Ben Milam in San Antone? Do you ride with me, or do I fight alone? All the men that followed to ride by his side, on to San Antonio to live or to die. The Battle of San Antonio was hard fought. On the third day, Ben Milam was killed while leading the fight. His death inspired his men on the paths to victory. As General Cos surrendered, he and his troops were sent back to Mexico. The kindness of the Texans was evidenced in the treatment of the Mexican troops. They were sent back to Mexico with supplies and guns to protect them from the Indians. After the fall of San Antonio, the Texans knew what lay in store. Santa Anna and his army were on their way to bring the Texas rebels to justice.
Ben Mallon was buried where he fell. This beautiful poem stands as a tribute to Colonel Mallon. Oft shall the soldier think of thee, the dauntless leaders of the brave, who on the heights of tyranny won freedom and glorious grave. And o'er that tomb shall pilgrims weep and utter prayers murmured low, that peaceful be the hero's sleep who conquered San Antonio. Enshrined on honor's deathless scroll, a nation's thanks shall be thy fame. Long as impetuous rivers roll, shall freedom's falters hymn thy name.
Colonel James W. Fannin was ordered by General Sam Houston to destroy the Presidio La Bahia at Goliad and go back to Victoria.
I want you to go destroy La Bahia, the Presidio, and return it to Victoria.
However, Fannin did not follow Houston's orders and was unaware of how close General Udea and his Mexican troops were to Goliad. Fannin planned to move all the weapons, but his failure to realize how near General Urrea's forces were led him to choose an extremely poor place to camp for the night.
Let's camp here.
Okay. Fannin and his troops camped in an open prairie.
Once General Ardea and his 450 soldiers arrived, the battle began. Realizing they were outnumbered, Fannin attempted to lead his soldiers to safety. However, they soon found themselves surrounded and were forced to surrender. Fannin agreed to give up their weapons and become prisoners of war.
General Santa Anna gave orders to execute all the Texans that were taken prisoners.
Execute all prisoners.
Fannin and his men were marched in 3 different groups on 3 different roads. These men believed that they were going to be released back to the United States. Sadly, they were all executed. Some men tried to escape and swim across the river. Most were still shot, but some managed to escape. One brave woman, Senora Francisca Alvarez, offered her home to those that escaped and later became known as the Angel of Goliad.
Destroy everything from Santa Anna. The armies can run through the last condition. Got this, guys. I really got this one.
There's an old saying that pride comes before the fall. If ever there was a prideful general, proud as a peacock, it was old Santa Anna. He forced his troops to march across the deserts of northern Mexico and South Texas in the bitter winter months, and because of his swiftness, they called him the Eagle. But he called himself the Napoleon of the West.
Many Texan soldiers lost their lives in the Battle of the Alamo. General Santa Anna led his troops toward the Texan coast, raiding and destroying every settlement in their way. General Sam Houston was in the town Gonzales when he heard the Battle of the Alamo was lost. He was devastated and quickly ordered his troops to fall back and make a hasty retreat toward the Colorado River in order to seek refuge from Santa Anna and his troops.
Fall back. Santa and his troops are coming. Go to the Colorado River. The Mexicans are coming. We have to leave now. Run for your lives.
Conditions during the runaway scrape were harsh. The weather was freezing and damp. There was a shortage of food as well. Both brought horrific diseases. Spring rain flooded rivers, which made them very hard to cross. Some were killed by Mexican bandits, and the others died of diseases. They were buried at the exact spot on the road where they died.
Napoleon of the West, with jewels upon your chest, with your white stallion and your head held so high, out to bring those rebels under my rule again, and head for the Rio Grande and ride through Texas again. Napoleon of the West, my army is the best. I'll bring this revolution to a rest, out to bring those rebels under my rule again, and head for the Rio Grande and ride through Texas again, and head for the Rio Grande and ride through Texas again. And they'd wish they'd never messed with Napoleon of the West. General Sam Houston was the commander-in-chief of the Texas Army and was maybe the only man with a clear view of what was in store. Houston thought the Texans could fight Santa Anna better as a movable army. Strike fast, retreat, strike again, instead of holding up at the Alamo or Goliad. The old mission.
In April of 1836, Sam Houston led his men to an open prairie along the San Jacinto River. Santa Anna and his men followed them there. Knowing there was only one way in and out, Sam Houston sent Dave Smith to blow up Vince's bridge. This kept Santa Anna and his men from escaping or getting reinforcements.
In the afternoon on April 21st, 1836, Sam Houston gave the order to attack while Santa Anna's men were napping. The Texan army attacked with cries of "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad." Texas won the victory in only 18 minutes, the fastest battle in the history of the world.
Remember the Alamo. Remember Goliath.
Texas scouts captured a man dressed in plain clothes, hiding in the woods. When they brought him to Sam Houston, Santa Anna's own men gave away his identity with shouts of El Presidente.
Santa Anna asked Sam Houston to treat him generously. Sam Houston replied, "You should have remembered that at the Alamo." Sam Houston knew that Santa Anna was important to keep alive. He spared his life in exchange for the Treaty of Velasco.
The Treaty of Velasco granted Texas independence from Mexico.
Santa Anna had to go back to Mexico and recognize the Republic of Texas as an independent country. The Texas Revolution was finally over, and through the sacrifices of many men, Texas was free.
Mission San Antonio de Valero has been abandoned.
March 2nd, 1836. While Santa Anna was readying his troops for the final assault on the Alamo, 59 delegates met at Washington on the Brazos to draft a Declaration of Independence and to form the Republic of Texas. And they heard this letter from Travis. To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, I am besieged. I have answered Santa Anna's demand for surrender with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. I call on you all in the name of liberty, patriotism, and everything that is dear to the American character to come to our aid with all dispatch. If this call is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and to die like a soldier who never forgets what is due his own honor and that of his country. Victory or death.